Good afternoon in the Pacific Northwest time zone of the United States, and wherever you are, insert your whatever. Howdy, we have Faz Radio today. Hey.
This is good. I like this. It's
he's our guest.
Okay.
That's why I was putting him in the middle. We have a Warren sandwich going on.
We have Warren here from TownCrush, Crusher-in-Chief of TownCrush. It's going to tell us all sorts of cool things about the game. One of my favorite games that Gala Games has hosted or had or published or whatever you call it. So welcome, Mr. Warren.
Thank you.
Yeah, Faz was pretty excited when he saw your post about wanting to talk with him. He gets really excited about games if you haven't seen any of the other episodes. And so when he saw that you had seen that, he's like, "Oh my God, this is so cool!" Yeah. So he's pretty excited to have you on today. Not that I'm not, but I'm just saying you really hit something hard with him there when you made that post.
Yeah, no, I just happened to be watching that podcast, and then you guys mentioned TownCrush, and I'm like, "Oh, that'd be a cool idea. Why don't I see if they want to talk about it?"
Well, back in the day, the reason I became a computer programmer is I wanted to be a game programmer when I grew up, and then I realized how hard it was.
Yeah.
So I just programmed for office stuff, which is pretty darn easy compared to all the physics and very creative math solutions that game developers have to do.
Yeah. I mean, I started out with business applications when I was programming stuff, and the game stuff can be more complex, but it's also got its mundane bits, as you know, I'm sure.
Well, now code is structured such so that you can split that off a lot easier. The more advanced physics stuff a lot easier than you could in the past. Back in the past, I remember they draw the screen and put the business logic in right when they're drawing the screen. If you remember the oldest, actually, I'm a bit of an Atari 2600 buff because I played it as a kid. Literally, while they were doing the lines on the screen, they were putting in the business logic, so to speak. It's like, okay, check for collision while we're doing the cursor draw across the screen.
Yeah, I've read a couple of books. Racing the Beam, I think, was one of them, and there's another couple about Atari 2600 development, and they did some.
It's crazy. And the Activision people got even more creative. Yeah.
Yeah, like while the scan beam is running, they're inserting bits into the code, so the next line will execute it when it hits it and stuff like that. It's just crazy hacks.
I just have a little bit more for people who are interested. There's actually a language now out. I believe it's based on it's like a Visual Basic or C# like language where you can program for the Atari 2600 and it will transpile to whatever gobbledygook Atari 2600 takes now. So just so you know, you could make a cartridge with it, a virtual cartridge, a cartridge ROM, and then upload it.
Yeah, the retro scene's gotten pretty good. They got a lot of good tools nowadays, way more than guys had back in the day.
Okay. Anyway, sorry, Mr. Titan, I cut you off there.
No, I was just going to ask him because we were talking about games. So, what is TownCrush kind of the type of game that you like to play, Warren? Or is this something different? What is your taste in games?
I mean, I like Match 3. I mean, I don't necessarily know that I'm the hugest fan. Like, there are people, obviously way more into it than I am. I mean, the game is fun to work on, which is the main reason I like it. Yeah. You guys are switching on me now.
That's not me. That Faz has button control, and you got to watch out when that happens.
No, in terms of games, I came up on first-person computers. Like I was at Epic for a while, so Unreal Tournament and Gears of War and Fortnite and those sorts of games, and that's really what resonates with me, I think, at a core level. But and role-playing games. I was huge into that when I was younger. The Commodore 64, Bard's Tale, Ultima, all that kind of stuff. Just, the good stuff.
I forget what game it was. Me and my buddy he had a C64, and it was a game, and it was an adventure game. You would go in, and there was the worst enemy in there was called berserkers. And we found this in one of the caves to where you could go in and out of that berserker room like 100 times. And with one spell, you could kill them, and you could level up like 75 levels in a night. So we would stay up all night fighting berserkers and then go out and kill other things during the day. We never slept.
There's always an exploit, isn't there?
Always. So coming up with
all right,
with TownCrush, right? So now this is my understanding, and you can feel free to tell me I'm an idiot, because Faz does on the regular anyway. I thought this was supposed to be like a mini game, right? Like a holdover kind of thing to test out Galachain, and it turned into a big fan favorite, but then it disappeared and now it's back. I mean, help walk us through how this whole thing came about.
Yeah, you're pretty correct. I mean, that's what so back when I was developing TownCrush, it wasn't actually being developed for Galachain. It was a little bit before that was ready for testing. And so as I was pushing the prototype forward and working on it internally, I got a ping from the Galachain team. They're like, hey, we're looking for a test game. We want to put it on here and see how it holds up in a real scenario sort of thing. And it's like, is TownCrush ready for that? And I was like, yeah, we could get it there. So I worked with the team. They put the Galachain code in there that needed to be in there. And it kind of became the test harness for those early versions. But I guess at the time, Geary, but
Oh, right.
Okay, so there was actually Galachain code in there then.
Well, it called out to Galachain code. There was nothing really in, like, it's written in the Godot game engine, TownCrush, not Geary. So it makes calls out to servers and such like that with commands and API stuff that Gala designed, but the hooks are there.
Nice.
Okay. And there was some debate. There was some debate about the integration level of Geary at the time. I remember, or Galachain at the time. There's on Crypto Faz Academy, a lot of people apparently seem to be in the know, and they seem to say lots of things about technically how things are working with these games, but they're not the game developers themselves, and they're not Gala Games themselves, so it's debatable as to how accurate they are. Some people like to weigh in on how the nodes work, which I think it's been repeated enough that we have an idea. But the games themselves, I hear all sorts of things about how integrated Galachain is into some of these games.
Yeah, I think it wildly depends on the game. I mean, I've really only been exposed to TownCrush, and in terms of Galachain actual interaction, we stored the NFTs and stuff you bought. We stored information about the matches, like who you completed this level, you used the 150 executioners or whatever you were doing, and that kind of jazz. And we were going to eventually expand it out to handle high scores and stuff, but it never quite got that far. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I do have some questions about the history of that, and it sounds like this always has been some sort of test project. I do vaguely recall games saying, hey, we're going to test this out and put this here. And a lot of people have been calling for TownCrush to come back. And Gala Games has been saying, hey, it was just a test. And frankly, that the level, the way the game looked, it looked rather, polished. So I'm rather surprised that there was such a polished test that if it was successful, why didn't they just keep it around? I mean, even if it just did call out to the chain, I mean, did it cost money for them to constantly host it and run it? It was
just it was pretty lightweight. I don't think it really cost that much money, if it cost anything in bandwidth. I mean, the thing, what made it a really good early Geary test was that it was a pretty low bandwidth game. Like, it wasn't constantly spamming transactions or constantly polling the chain. It would be like you play around for a couple of minutes and then submit your score, sort of thing, or you'd use an execution, or it would write that out. Like it wasn't this super high frequency thing, something like, I don't know, Spider Tanks might be, or whatever. But yeah, the polished level on that test version was a blessing and a curse, like, because it made it look a lot more finished than it perhaps was. But it worked, and it looked pretty, and everybody liked it. So yeah, that was great. But
so I wish it would have stayed around even with the 10 levels. But of course, I think the fans of or anti-fans of Gala games, they would have eventually started bitching about that. Like, how come there aren't more levels?
Yeah, I mean, so what happened there was we had the test thing and the Mayhem stuff, and then we decided that after everybody liked it so much, we were going to develop it into a full game, because it was never really going to go the whole way. But then once they saw the popularity of it, it's like, okay, yeah, let's do this. Let's put Warren in charge of it, and you make it a full, a real boy, big game. And then that progressed for a while. I don't remember the exact timelines, but it kind of came to an end around the acquisition of Ember, because Ember had a couple match 3 games. They had Dragon Strike, they had Meow Match, and since TownCrush wasn't done, it was like, well, this no longer seems like the greatest allocation of resources. So perhaps we'll shelve that for now, or perhaps forever, depending how it goes.
That had to be some crushing news.
Yeah. No. Yeah, actually, I mean, it wasn't completely unexpected. The game was kind of dragging on a little bit in development, and then when some alternatives appeared, I was like, "Yeah, this might not go the way I want it to go." But that's just the reality. Like, developers have games canceled all the time. It's not unusual. So I kind of take it in stride. I'm like, okay, I'll just go work on something else then.
It seemed to me actually that the game was at a certain finish level and just needed levels. And I thought I heard something along the lines of like 100 levels were going to be made. I mean, technically, even those levels could be generated, right?
Somewhat. I mean, that gets, yeah. I mean, if it's just a raw, like a simple match 3, like TownCrush was, you could probably generate something. And I actually had considered that, doing some kind of level generator, like take like one of those dungeon generation routines and just make it so each room becomes a cell on the board and just play it or whatever. There's no guarantee that it'll work, but I bet a lot of them would. But yeah, I mean, again, the game was the prototype was very polished, and while that was cool and I liked doing it, it gave people the perception that it was maybe more complete than it really was. Like,
so are you keeping? Well, yeah, that's where I was just going to go. Is with your new creative control here, are you going to take it to the vision you originally had for it at this point?
Yeah, well, that's the idea. I mean, that's why I want it, or I'm enjoying the solo development, like we talked earlier, and I get to do the stuff that I think is best for it, sort of thing, and nobody can tell me, tell me any different. And it's been good because I've actually gone back to the drawing board on the code and started over again, and built it back up from scratch. It's a much more powerful base right now. It is. I'm actually pretty happy with it. The problem I had before was the game was there, complete and running, but trying to build stuff on top of it was a nightmare. It was just like the old adage about the foundation of sand or whatever. It's just everything you did was just painful and slow, and stuff would break. And so I vowed this time around I was going to build it in a much better way, and that's been going really good, actually.
Very good. Zorro has a question for you. Okay. Zorro is one of our wonderfully integrated CFA community members and a huge part of the Gala ecosystem. He even puts Gala in his name, right? I'm sure you've bumped into him before. So he asks, what's the current stage of TownCrush? Will it have its own NFTs or TownStar interoperability? Is it going to kind of mesh together? What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, it will have NFTs. Not a ton though. At first, at least, I want to keep it relatively simple so I can actually, get it done. And in terms of interoperability with TownStar, we have talked about that quite a bit. Actually, when I was internal, we talked about, hey, why don't we take TownCrush and make it like a little, when you're waiting for your town to build, it'll pop up in a little window and you can just play a couple rounds while you're waiting or just killing time, right? If you get a higher score, maybe you can speed up your build time or something. Stuff like that got bandied about, but never actually came to fruition. But integration with TownStar, I don't have huge hopes for that, especially since it's going to Common Ground now and all that. It's kind of same theme but different IP, and who knows.
So this is actually going to be a full-blown game, not just like a mini game or a tavern game or anything like that, correct?
My goal is to have it be an actual game that'll in my head, the way it's going to look is it's going to ship probably with the same kind of functionality as it had back in the test, but structured in such a way that I can deliver new content like each week, little level packs, stuff like that. It'll have leaderboards, it'll have competition rankings, and there's editors built into it so people can make their own level sets and share them with their friends and that kind of stuff. So I'm really trying to push it out and make it something that'll last a little bit longer than a few weekends or whatnot.
That's exactly what the Gala community is looking for, the ability to keep fresh with it, really, because you can only play a game so many times before it gets boring, right? So if you can take that to that next level and allow, even like you were saying, the community to bring things into it and share different parts of it so it stays fresh, I think that's a tremendous way to look at it going forward.
Yeah, user-generated content is a huge one for me, and I really want to have good tools so people will have a good time making levels and make it easy to share and that kind of stuff. I think that's my experience at Epic Games with Unreal Tournament, and that was a huge part of why the game stayed relevant for so long, is because we included the editor and we released these level packs. And it just kept the community engaged, right? So that's just something I'm carrying forward, I think.
Well, I'd love to be able to integrate other NFTs into the game besides just TownStar stuff. I mean, Miranda stuff, or even, I have a set of NFTs. It'd be great to be able to add those in. I mean, or anybody. I mean, I think that'd be a good way to keep the project going and keep it relevant for new NFTs that come out next year, 2 years, 3 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, that stuff gets tricky as to what integration means. Like, is it just some graphical, like the box in TownStar, like they're just there and they kind of walk around and, and at the time they were helping with earnings. That's kind of their whole purpose. So the level of integration is what will affect how much you can actually do with that. But I like the idea, and somebody has been banging on me about, can we get the box integrated somehow?
Well, it could be a standard way, such as, well, then you need a picture that would fit this template. I mean, if you're talking TownCrush, you just need pictures that maybe have some animation standards that you want, and it would say, well, everything gets animated like that. If you provide a couple pictures, you should be able to integrate to the game.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you do provide some sort of a standard that people fit into, then it is easier. Like the box, just sitting here talking about it now, I'm like, well, there is a little avatar thing, like, the farmer's face that reacts to everything that's going on. You could probably, through some research, figure out how to render the box into a little window and get it to show up in that little avatar thing, which I think people would like. That'd be cool.
Yeah, if you could put your own Vox or something in there, that reads from your wallet or something, I think people would love that.
That would be neat.
That, or I would imagine the Gala community has been in the past, especially with Voxverse and things like that, very, very, very into like the Easter egg concept of hiding things and discovering things in game. That might be something where they have a secret mission to be able to enable that feature or something like that. That might be something that they could really get into and would take the game, to have like that little mini game inside the game itself.
Yeah. Who knows where it will go, right? Like, my intention is that this game lives for a while, so it'll have lots of opportunities to grow and evolve and add things to it.
So Punjab, who's been with us for a very, very long time in our almost 3-year tenure here, what makes TownCrush need blockchain? Why do you think a match 3 game needs NFT or tokenomics?
Yeah, we just had an interesting discussion in Gold the other day about that. And I'm actually, so kind of what I want to do with TownCrush is, I can only really speak to TownCrush specifically, but like I want to try to approach it like a web 2.5 game sort of thing at first. So we'll have blockchain integrated, because I think there is a lot of interesting stuff that can happen there, right? You can store things on the blockchain. You can store leaderboards, can have batches of binary data with them that represent like what the player did during the game, and then those games can be verified by just running it through the game engine sort of thing. And storing those things on the blockchain is cool because they're trackable, they're immutable, and you can't really argue with the results. Right. And obviously, little stuff we put in there, if there's some sort of a currency you can buy, we're going to want to track it, because I like the idea of somebody who wants to come into TownCrush and they get involved and they buy a few things maybe, and then they don't want to be involved anymore. I like them having the ability to get out, be able to sell and move on to some other game and not feel like they wasted their money.
So let me add on to that towards the end of this and ask, this is kind of a follow-up. So with the NFTs in the game, do you have creative control on that? Or does Gala come to you and say like, hey, we need you to integrate some NFTs in. We need you to have 4 in it. You got to figure out how to do it. Or is that something that you just come up with and run with as you see fit?
Yeah, the way the contract is structured is that I have full creative control over everything. So there is no influence from Gala beyond whatever advice I want to solicit from them, and they're generous enough to provide. But in terms of creative direction, what NFTs do, how the game plays, that's all mine.
Well, this is an area that I've seen a lot of Gala supporter and heckler opinions on. They seem to think they know how Gala works with these companies, with companies that of the games that they publish. It seems like I've heard a lot of people saying that Gala tends to strong arm their published games into doing certain things at certain times. Now it might be that they do it with some games and not others. And it might be that your game TownCrush was because it was an experiment. Maybe they never thought to go there, but I was just curious if you had any insight into that, how they work with game developers. Well,
I mean, it depends entirely on the developer. Like TownCrush, when I started it, was a Gala product. It was a Gala product, so they had full influence over everything. They could, I was working for them. But since this whole thing,
you had creative control. Yes, but I mean, so how does that work?
Not immunity to higher powers wanting something or other to happen, sort of thing. Like it is in any company.
Right.
With this new setup, though, that's removed, and I get to do whatever I want to do.
Is that scary?
Kinda, because it's like if it sucks, it's on me. I can't blame anybody else. But yeah, and well, I mean, in terms of how Gala works with other companies, I don't necessarily know that I can speak to that with any authority, but I do know that there's different ways things are structured, right? Like I think if you have a game, you come to Gala with a game and you sell a bunch of NFTs, and you've got this big pile of money that got delivered through the Gala platform. Gala has a lot more influence over what you do with that game and how you handle that game, in my opinion. Something like TownCrush, where I'm an independent developer, doing it on my own at my own expense with no support or financing. There's really none of that.
So there was these executioner NFTs. I believe they were for sale, weren't they? I know that I have at least one or two of them.
I have literally been trying to remember how that worked. I know there was an in-game store, and you could spend stars in the store. I think we sold the stars, but I don't think we sold the executioners themselves.
I remember I somehow arranged to get them, and I don't remember if they're NFTs or something I purchased. I mean, back then in the heyday, everything was relatively cheap if you had Gala, but expensive if you wanted to spend $1.
Well, at the time, there was also there was the what's it called, the Cursed Coop NFT that would give you some free executioners every time you played, but I don't think that was for sale. I think we gave that to people who participated in the initial playtest or something like that.
Okay, but that's a perfect example. I was curious if you happen to have whatever qualified you for an executioner back in the day. Would that still be relevant later whenever this comes out again?
I'd like it to be, but the trouble is that that was an early version of Geary, stored in a database someplace. I have the database, to be honest. I was able to get it from Gala. They were very cool about that, but I still don't know whether I can parse it or make any use of it. My goal is that if you had stuff, we'll do something for you in the full release. You get something out of it.
Going into the next iteration, the existential question that everybody always asks, let's ask it and get it out of the way. What's your timeline look like for getting things up and running with this?
Yeah. My goal in my head is I want to have at least an early version running by the end of the year. That's kind of where I'm shooting. I think that gives, what is that, 2.5 months?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So 2.5 months, holidays notwithstanding, I should be able to get something up, I think. And maybe it'll be a closed, like a small circle of enthusiasts who want to bang on it for me and knock it out. But I mean, I do want to get it out relatively soon. I don't want it to drag on too long, which is why I'm targeting the original feature set, right? Because I don't want to expand too much, and then the game gets delayed, and then it's feature creep to death and all that.
We've knocked down that door 100 times on the show over the years, and the consensus seems to be is that people would rather have something out that they can, as you say, bang on it and then get the feedback and then add, and the regular updates and the communication around the updates is really what keeps the pitchforks, in the shed instead of being sharpened in the tool shed. So we're hoping that with this next build that you do, you kind of can look back at some of not only your own interactions, but some of the other previous communications on how that worked. So it's nice and smooth for you, and you don't get to the point of frustrated with the community because they're frustrated with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having the community, like particularly the hardline supporters, the people that really like the game, play the game as early as possible is super useful. Just they will poke around, and they will actually report bugs to you as opposed to discovering an exploit and keeping it in their pocket for later, that kind of thing. But I mean, getting it into the hands of fans is definitely the top goal. And there's a few tech things I have to work out still. I'm going to work with Gala on getting it hooked up to Galachain, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm still doing at the same time. So it's tough, but I am internally committing to the beginning of the year.
So we had that conversation in several of the channels on the Gala server about the ability. Some of the developers were saying, hey, we've been ready like forever and a day. it's Galachain that's kind of holding us up. You kind of alluded a little bit to that in the statement that you made, that it's difficult connecting into Galachain. Do you see that as something, as an obstacle to overcome, or do you let Gala kind of work on that on the back end and you just focus on the game itself?
Yeah. I wouldn't say that it's. See, I lack the direct experience in communicating with Galachain. That was never my thing. I was just kind of like, hey, this needs to communicate, and the Galachain need to be like, great, now it does, sort of thing. Here's a perform some wizardry, and now it does. So as to how difficult that was, I don't know, but I would imagine it's a lot easier now. I mean, that was like the first version of Geary that barely walked. Well, I mean, it held up against TownCrush, which was great, but yeah, the current version, I can only imagine it's much easier. But
it sounds like.
Sorry.
So if they did all that stuff for you, it sounds like you don't have the most insight into Galachain's current capabilities.
Not right now, no. And that was ages ago. That was like a year and a half ago or so. So I mean, it's come a long way since then. So yeah, I don't have any great info on that, but I do know that I will be working with Gala pretty soon. I've got access to a couple engineers who are cool enough to help me out with it. So I'm hoping it's not that painful.
We all hope that. We have a question from Teleport Labs. Is this going to be an app, or is this going to be like a browser game?
Well, it was a browser game before, and that brought with it lots of challenges that I could, and a bunch of them that I couldn't overcome. There's techie concerns, like not being able to, like when you're running in a browser as an HTML5 app, you can't access the local file system, and you can't access the clipboard, and you can't do a number of things that would be really handy and cool. So my goal this time is to have native apps on the 3 big desktop platforms and iOS and Android. That's what I want to have.
Any idea? Oh, sorry. I thought you were done.
No, well, I paused to collect myself, but
right.
Well, I mean, I don't have any experience with Android, but since I'm using Godot, I can't imagine that it's more than a few checkboxes. I hope. I'll see how it goes.
Yeah, in the development world, it's really that easy. You just poke checkboxes and everything works, right?
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Are you shooting?
Titan will set you straight.
Are you shooting for any particular one of those as like the first go, whether it be desktop or mobile first?
Well, the easiest thing to get it up and running on is desktop, because that's where it runs now. So we can do Mac, Windows, and Linux there really easily. It's working on all 3 of those already. So having people do the early tests on desktop, I think, is probably the way to go.
Awesome. Mr. Faz, I've cut you off like 4 times. I know you had a slew of things to talk. I'm sorry. I get excited when we have developers on. I like to pepper them.
Well, I do have a question here. Is this the only game that you're working right now, or that you want to reveal right now?
It's the only one that I'm personally working on. Yeah.
It's good to hear. So then sounds like December timeframe shouldn't be hard to meet, right?
Well, depending, since it is only me, any stumblers or any challenges, put pressure on the timeline. But things have been going actually really well. I've been pleased. Just on a personal note, I think my growth as a software engineer over the last couple of years is starting to come together nicely, and I feel pretty comfortable with a lot of stuff. So there's not a lot that scares me off right now. So I remain optimistic about the end of the year.
I would be interested in hearing how you guys, how you actually test the game and put it together. Because at one time you had made some little dev blogs on YouTube for TownCrush. I'd love to be able to see more stuff like that with games that the various developers are working on. For my experience in getting them to agree to show their stuff or show how they're building their stuff hasn't gone very well. People tend to like to keep their cards close to their chest before a game has come out or before even a new feature has come out.
Yeah,
and they definitely don't like to show bugs.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to lean on the side of I like being a lot more open and a lot more just like, yeah, this is what it is. It's it looks a little ugly right now. I'll fix it. If that part's broken, don't touch it. That kind of thing is fine with me. I don't care. So far, the devlogs have been mostly they've been pretty techie oriented. It's like, oh, I did this with the data compression, or oh, I did this with the server, or I'm doing this with the database, and that's interesting to a certain subsect of people. But I think a lot of people want to hear about the game, what it looks like, how it plays, and that kind of stuff. And I am anticipating that as the weeks go on, we'll see some sort of a shift eventually, because I'll have the core technology together eventually. And then, I'll be all about like, oh, and this is how I tweaked the gameplay, and this is how I tweaked how the matching feels and sounds and the timing on things and that kind of jazz. So I think it will swing back more into gameplay stuff pretty soon, hopefully.
I have a very big question for you. So why Gala Games? Why? I mean, you could drop it on Steam. You could drop it on any of the other dozen, Web3 platforms that are being built out at this point. What made you want to choose Gala Games to launch this on?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, the main one being that I like Gala. Yeah, I just
Nothing
do. I like
wrong with that.
No, I like the people. I like the technology. I like the the mission. I like all of it. And there's also the small point that TownCrush is their IP. So,
oh, okay.
To use it, it's in the contract that I can use it for TownCrush, but I don't own it. It's just I have a usage license for it. And and the truth is, I can actually release it on whatever platform I want to. The contract's very open that way. I'll probably start with Gala, but hopefully we'll get into like, if it proves popular and worthwhile, we can get it into the iOS store. We can get it into other platforms, Steam maybe. Who knows? Like, I could do whatever I want really, but I think
the iOS store. The iOS store would be happy with Web3 now. I thought iOS Apple had a problem with that kind of stuff.
They announced something recently, didn't they? That they were cool with it, or
well, to a point. They're going to take their 30%. That's what's being still argued about now. They're open to the concept of it, but the payment is where the rocks are gnashing together.
Yeah, which might work out okay for me. Like I say, we're kind of doing like a very light Web3 layer on the initial release. It's not going to be hardcore like tokens and NFTs flying everywhere and all that. So hopefully just some use of an external blockchain wouldn't be a big problem for them. We'll see.
Do you see that that blockchain being more useful over time for gaming? I mean, how do you relate personally when you look at, hey, do I launch this as a traditional game or as a blockchain game? What's the benefit to you from the developer side on using blockchain over just traditional means of releasing a game?
Well, from the developer side, I mean, I do get used to that transaction history on the blockchain, which is handy. To be honest, there's not a ton of advantages for a developer, but I think it's more about like what the players get out of it, right? Like being able to own their digital goods. I mean, that's a huge part of it, and that's the biggest thing missing from Web2 gaming. So having the blockchain be able to alleviate that, I think, is a huge win. And I think it's going to be like kind of like microtransactions were, like back in the day. People just had a fit. They hated that stuff when it first came out, and now it's like it's expected. Every game has microtransactions, and I think eventually every game will have blockchain.
So Frankie or Gold is asking, I think something similar. Does the iOS store have a problem with NFTs?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know because I haven't even looked into it. I do want to do a native iOS app, but if that's some sort of a roadblock, then we'll have to work around it somehow.
All right. Well, I got my. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Faz. I'm hogging this entire.
No, I got my questions, so go for it.
I'm a little strong-willed today. So yeah, it is. I'm excited. I had a crappy week at my day job. My colleague was out on holiday this week, so I had to do like 8 times the work. So I was in total stupid mode Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so I'm pretty excited. So when it comes to this whole gaming development piece,
yeah,
how much time do you actually spend building a game? I mean, is it like a 40-hour work week for you, or do you just kind of, as you kind of think of something, you go and you write it? How does that work on the back end?
I've been trying to figure that out actually as I go along. Like, what is the right cadence to it? Like, back when I started in game development, I mean, people would just work like stupid hours. Just, it's just like you're always at your desk, you're always working on it because you love what you're doing and you're 20 years old, so you don't care. But as I get older, I'm like, I kind of care, and I don't want to sit here all the time. So right now I'm trying to work it into like a 40-hour work week, although I tend to work, do stuff on the weekends too. But
and then you add ADHD to that, and you don't get anything done.
Yeah, I mean, like programming is like an interesting profession. Like I could sometimes sit down and say, yeah, I'm going to sit here for 6 hours and grind some stuff out, and you do it. And other times you have to go and sit in a chair for 2 hours and just think about something and then stand up and code it in 10 minutes at your desk because you were able to reason through it. So it just depends 100% on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. But in general, this is the only thing I'm doing. This is my job, so to speak. So I spend as much time on it as I reasonably can, to be open. I like working on it, so I work on it.
Well, that's a good thing. And that is part of what Gala has been communicating. They don't communicate beyond, hey, we work really hard at this. You have no idea how hard we're working. And so when we talk to the devs, I like to ask that question of, what does it look like for you there? Because a lot of people, I think, don't understand. And Faz brought me around on this over the years as we've talked about it more and more, that dev work is a lot harder than people think it is, right? It's not just like going into Canva and making a screen look pretty and pushing a button to save it, and there's your game, right? There's constantly things that are going on. And so that's a really good perspective coming from your side so that people can kind of see behind the curtain a little bit and, hey, this guy isn't going to burn himself out working 15-hour days, 7 days a week. And having that creative control, like you had gotten with your contract, as you mentioned, is huge too, because the community can communicate directly with you to be able to see about things and ideas and everything that they'd like to see in the game, and gives you new ideas to test out. I think that's one of the biggest parts of people. Quite honestly, I think people value that more than a token or an NFT or anything. Being able to have some input and see it actually implemented into that. And if it fails, it fails. But at least they know someone's listening and someone's trying to implement things that players want.
Well, that's easy to do for simple games, but the more complicated they get, the harder it is to work in suggestions. If TownCrush is doing things in a 3x3 grid, and somebody says, "Hey, I want a 20x20 grid," or "I want to have a dynamically sized grid. Then you have a number of design problems you got to get in there. And what's funny is you work hard on something. You work like, just a long on something, and people will see it, they'll get it, and they'll be like, aha, well, then you could just do this too, right? Yeah, that's another like 6 months of work. It certainly follows that you can do that, but it's going to take a lot longer. In the meantime, I can make it so you can change the color pretty easy.
Well, I mean, I think to a degree, that's a bit of that comes with experience. It's a bit of an art form. Like you can take the feedback from the community. Like I remember, now that you mentioned it, I remember back when we did the initial play test. I think it was after June Mayhem. We sent out a questionnaire to people who were interested. What did you like about the game? What would you like to add about the game? And I got an insane amount of feedback. I have a gigantic spreadsheet someplace of all the stuff that people suggested. Like there's no shortage of ideas. And I think that your job as a designer is to not just say yes or no, but also look at the idea and say, well, is there a kernel here we can pull out? Like, can we get the core of this in somehow? Not the exact idea, maybe, because they don't fully understand the big picture of the game, but we could do part of it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's all I'm getting at. When people look at, in my case, in the business world, when people look at the applications that I've made and they come to the next conclusion pretty quickly, and I give them part of it, then there's always some consternation. It's like, how come you got this seemingly complicated thing done, but you can't just do this one thing? You can't take this list over here and this list over, have them like, looking at each other. And it's like, well, this list comes from over here, this list comes from over there, and the way we have to get them and marry the data, get back together, and then update the data later, it looks easy, but it's not. So there's that's all I wanted to get. And I see a lot of people complaining on CFA and games about certain things that they'd like to see that can be orders of magnitude harder. And all of a sudden, everybody's an expert. Everybody's a software developer. And they're like, well, I know such and such a game. Well, I could program this. Yeah, you could, but you're not a software developer.
It's like, that shouldn't take more than a weekend. It's like, it's actually going to take about 3 months, but sorry about that.
I used to have a boss. I used to have a boss who would always start a difficult conversation with, how hard would it be? How would it be to do this? Well, that's 6 months to do right there. What? I don't get it. Why? What am I paying you for? Well, I mean, you're paying me so that you can get what you have, the promises that you have made, done. But my bosses would always be 6 months in the future. They'd be selling things that they didn't have. Yeah. And I see Gala Games doing that, and I see people getting really pissed. Because Gala Games says, hey, we're going to make a deal with such and such. This is something that you'd never hear with other game companies. We're going to make a deal with such and such. And then we've made a deal with such and such. And then everybody has to wait 3 years for such and such to be developed. And this is why other game companies shut the hell up and they don't tell what they're doing until right before they come out. Because people don't want to wait once they've heard about something. It's literally, people are saying, lie to me. I don't want to know.
Yeah, I think there definitely is a balance there. I think that companies like Blizzard are maybe a little too they're too closed up. You'll hear nothing about a game for like 4 years, 5 years, and then suddenly it appears. I don't love that particular cycle, but stuff that's a little more open is more my bag. But yeah, I mean, there's limits. You can't go too far because sometimes like plans change, right? Like, oh, we signed a deal with so-and-so and that's great. But then 6 months later, that's not quite working out.
Well, so if you are open, the audience may not understand. If you literally say we're going to have 100 new levels out for TownCrush in a couple months and you don't, they're going to start calling you a scammer. The crypto community will start calling you a scammer. And then you'll be like, well, if you're like Benefactor, you'll be like, fuck you guys. We're working as hard as we can. And people don't want to hear that. They want to see done games. So, that's my observation. And I constantly give Titan and other people a hard time explaining that software development is hard. People think it's easy, maybe with ChatGPT. People think it's easy, but it's not.
Yeah, that's something I try to explain to people too. They're like, oh, oh, my kid wants to get into game development. I'm like, are you sure? Because it really is a job, I swear.
And then just adding a feature. So if you have 30 features in a game and you add one feature, you haven't always added just one thing. It interacts with all the other features. So
you've added some bugs too.
Yeah. Well, you always, whenever you add new features, you create bugs with the old and the new code. And God forbid you try and change your pattern at all, because then it's all screwed.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of managing the expectations on that stuff. Like, you're learning how much to tell the community and how much not to tell the community, and hopefully I'll land in a good place. We'll see how it goes.
Well, we've learned over the years that communication is key to that. Mm-hmm. And being upfront with the community and letting them know what's going on and what the problems are. And if there's delays, knowing early rather than 4 hours before everybody's geared up to play it is a big key. And talking with the community, if someone has suggestions or you mention a feature that you're putting in the game and 2 weeks later you find that it's going to be a little difficult, having those dev notes or stuff like that says, you know what, I'm getting nothing but bugs trying it this way. We're going to put that one off to the side for a moment. We're going to move on with the development on the other piece. I'm not throwing that away, but I'm going to work on it behind the scenes a little bit. Then you don't have pitchforks. People are going to be, a little disappointed, sure, but they know what the hell's going on. If you can communicate with the fans of your game, you are going to have the most insane leg up on the rest of these developers.
If you're nice about it. If you're nice about it, yes.
That you could ever imagine, because that's what they want.
It'd be nice and open and informative, and you don't have to tell them everything necessarily, but tell them, just try to be honest about it. That's what I think it really is about. It's like that old, the old cliche, the easiest thing to remember is the truth. Right. So just be open about the development. There's a bug here. I got stalled here, whatever. It's just, I think that's the key to it. I mean, I am going to take issue with that comment I just saw about ChatGPT, because ChatGPT has been like a real story from the trenches. I mean, I love ChatGPT. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it is, in the course of this thing, I've had to learn about writing PHP and setting up a database on a server, and having Godot communicate with that, and just all sorts of programming questions come up all day long, and being able to throw them into an AI. It's not always ChatGPT. Like, I have them integrated into a few of my IDEs as well. The ones from JetBrains are really good about that. But just being able to throw a code snippet in and just have it explain it to you is almost like having a second programmer beside you, because you could be like, okay, you think it does this, 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 and this.
Yeah, ChatGPT.
That's not what I intended. Okay,
for me, ChatGPT is fired Stack Overflow. If I have a problem, I would post code to Stack Overflow, and of course you have to anonymize it and stuff like that. And you'd be like, okay, this is my problem, and people get really pissy on Stack Overflow. Well, you need to have the entire problem written out. ChatGPT a lot of times will just know where you're going, and you'll throw some code down and be like, what's going on here? I'm trying to do this. And it'll be like, oh, I see where you went wrong. You should actually be doing it this way. And it may not get its code right.
Well, honestly, the amount of times that I ask it to generate code, never actually. I just generally will put my own code in there and talk about it with it. Like, I'll just say, this is doing this. It's a little bit weird. And then it will, half the time, it'll throw in a little side comment at the end. It'll be like, oh, by the way, if this value is this, you're going to have a problem. I'll look at it and I'll be like, oh, shit, you're right. So I'll have to put in some guards for that. Or whatever.
Well, I've always wanted like hello world examples. Like, if I go and work with a new technology, it's like, okay. Yeah. I understand that you got to do this and this, but when I tried to get that to work, it didn't work. Just show me a hello world example. And it blows out a hello world example. And it's like, okay, I got this basic thing written out. And then you could start asking questions about it. What's this part for? What's that part for? And that's when it goes into, oh, well, let me explain this, and just rolls it all out for you.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. It's the way I explain it to people is it's like having a much more experienced programmer that sits beside me that just hangs out all day so I can ask questions. You'd be like, hey, what does this thing look like to you? sort of thing. Or this is broken, or I'm getting this weird error message. What does that mean? Oh, right. Okay, let me fix it. Like, and I don't consider that cheating. I consider that you're just leveraging technology. I mean,
so I'm a little bit troubled how my kid's school is portraying ChatGPT, and I think really what they don't want is kids to use it to do their homework. I understand that,
like write essays or whatever.
But with them and their friends and stuff like that, I'm starting to find that kids are like, "Oh, you use ChatGPT? It doesn't know what the hell it's talking about." Well, actually, it does. It's this you might be using it the wrong way, or your teachers don't want you to use it. Now, yes, it does have hallucination problems. In fact, I found a lot of success with it when I treat it like another human. Sometimes it'll make this weird ass claim, and I'll be like, show me a reference.
Exactly.
And it'll be like, oh, well, I got that wrong. And actually it should be this. And I was like, I thought so, because that looked weird. So, I mean, you shouldn't trust everything it gives you if something seems weird. One thing I was asking it about taxes, and I put in a tax form name, and it told me something totally different. And I'm like, that's not tax related. What the hell is this? They're like, oh, we got it wrong. Since you're talking about taxes. Okay. So just like another human, a human could get on the wrong path, so can ChatGPT.
Sure, even source code. I mean, like you have to. Even just today, I threw some snippet in there. I was asking it about it, and it came back with some suggestion. I looked at it, and I'm like, that's not valid GD script. You can't do that. So I was like, are you sure? That's my favorite phrase with it. Are you sure? But it's like, oh, geez, no, sorry. What you want to do is this instead. So so that's like a healthy sense of skepticism is the best way to use it.
Well, that's not even a hallucination, but say you and I were to talk code, at some point I'm going to lose context with what you're talking about. And I'm going to go, wait, what? Well, ChatGPT never says, wait, what? It just rolls it all out. It just assumes, oh, okay, I'm just going to go with what I know. Yeah. Blah. And then you're like, you're full of shit. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry. Let me tell you the other thing. You're like, okay, yeah, you're right. What the hell? It just doesn't understand context clues sometimes. And okay, that's easy to fill in.
Yeah. I expect that by ChatGPT, by version 6 or 7, we should have all that ironed out and it'll be flawless. But but yeah, right now I treat it like a human coworker. I look at the stuff it tells me, and I do my own research and I verify that what it's saying is correct before I start using it. But it's still a huge time saver. Like,
points you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what the correct code looks like anyway. Even if it's a new language, you're like, yes, I was looking for something. I knew it should look like that. And then, then if it compiles, then that helps.
Yeah, but that's where you get those little moments. You're like, you look at the code and you're like, just as an experienced programmer, you're like, that doesn't feel right, or that smells bad. He misunderstood something. Let me rephrase it or whatever. Yeah.
And you can say, create an object that has this, and this is what, I don't know if JetBrains has caught up with this or not, but in the past I've wanted to just create an object with these 5 properties in it, and they'd have a little wizard and stuff like that. With ChatGPT, you could just say, create an object with that would get common things to do with phone numbers and addresses. Blah, it blows that out. And then you can just go modify it. Bang, 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 bang. So it's nice to just get the base down for if you had a lot of code to throw down.
Well, and honestly, something people don't necessarily think about is like as programmers, you often end up with, hey, I've got this chunk of data or this chunk of text data, let's say, that I need to massage in a certain way. So I can write a little Python script or something to knock that out. Or I could paste it into ChatGPT and tell it to do it. And 9 times out of 10, it'll do it. So it's almost like a great little script writing utility. Be like, yeah, I need this formatted, and anywhere you see an M, I need this thing shifted over, and blah, blah, blah. And it does it.
Mm-hmm. And you mean you don't need regex? Because there are people I know that are great with regex in the Windows, in the Visual Studio, like search and replace box. They're like, you could put regex and you do this weird, strange incantation, and it like fixes all your code. I don't need to worry about that shit with ChatGPT.
Man, I hate it so much.
I haven't even tried ChatGPT because I've been out of software development for a little while. I haven't even tried it to like write SQL statements or anything like that. I've had it generate code from languages that I didn't understand. Like, how would it be done in this language? That's the biggest one, again, because in the past it would take so much research with Stack Overflow and so on. And you're like, you see an example on Stack Overflow and they're like almost there, and you're like, yeah, but I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it a different way. I know I'm missing a keyword or I'm missing some little thing. ChatGPT will just
it does remove that entire game of trying to guess the right keyword when you're searching at Google. That drove me insane.
I think what it really is people somehow think that ChatGPT is like God and will write everything. Or if you're a script kiddie, you think that ChatGPT is going to write the whole program for you. No, it's not. You can tell it to write a whole program. It may not work. And if it does work, it's going to work in some whack-ass way that ChatGPT thinks it will. But if you work with it for a while, you could say, okay, what you got there is good. Adjust this, take out that loop, and can you use, like, I don't know, something else, some other mathematical structure, or let's make this, boy, you're iterating a lot through this. Is there a way that you can combine these in a different way? You know, I forgot the name for it, but you know what I'm talking about, right? And then it's like, oh, you want to use a matrice or something like that. Yeah, well, we could do that. Let's put this in an array. Let's do this, you know.
Yeah, so that's literally one that I've done in recent memory. I took a big chunk of code, I threw it in there, and I just said, is there any way to simplify this? And it was like, yeah, you can do this. I was like, oh shit, you're right. So it's great for that kind of stuff. So I don't have to spend an hour looking at a block of code just to find an optimization or to shrink it down or whatever.
Well, I got somebody speaking up for me here.
I see that. Yeah, I was talking to Titan earlier. I mean, I'm really enjoying this this solo indie dev thing. It's been a great. It's one that I've wanted to do for my entire career, and now I actually get to do it. It's fun. It's fun. It's scary but fun.
Nothing scary about it. You already have a proven winner. All right, people are already fans, and it's just reiterating it in a slightly different way with more of your vision added to it. So I think you're off to a fantastic start with that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think so too. It's nice to work with a proven game that people have experienced and do like. You know, it's not a complete unknown coming out of nowhere.
So in the spirit of Gala community, they're gonna expect then if you release in January and February, the virtual reality version where the blocks commit your head is going to be ready then, right?
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole thing, but I have no experience with managing a community post-release. That's going to be fun. But I think if I just keep on the same pattern I'm on now, just keep it open, honest, and just keep going forward.
The community seems to love you, Warren. They do. And they're a critical bunch. You watch that chat go by. Yeah. And you know that, and there's not stupid people in any of these servers, right? There's a lot of really, really smart people. And when you can relate with them like that, and you're building that relationship with them as you have been, and as you move forward with this project that's already a proven winner, I think you are going to do very, very well with the release of this game.
Man, I hope so. That would be a nice capper to all this. It's just a nice, successful game that people like playing. It's fun because that's one of the goal. Honestly, during the Mayhem events and people were playing and people were talking about it, they were bitching about level 8 was impossible and level 12 is too hard and all this stuff. That was a friggin' blast, and I can't wait to do that for like months on end. It's just it's going to be great, but I got to get over the hill first.
Well,
I don't think you're going to have a problem.
One of the things I liked about TownCrush is just the way the animation worked. Whenever like sometimes when the blocks would hit each other, you'd see one block hit another one, the other one react, and then they both shake, and then they go nuts. And especially when they all go nuts, you get this inner adrenaline dopamine reaction because it's like, oh man, I made all this shit happen. That's what I really like about it.
And that ties into a big thing about what makes a game good, makes people want to stick with it, and it's generally not the larger features. It's the moment-to-moment gameplay. How does it feel move by move. Like shooters or match threes or any of them are the same way. It depends how the game feels, how it responds to you. Is it quick? Is it satisfying? And if you can get that nailed down, then it's just you're on a good path.
It didn't look cheap. As Faz mentioned, those little details like that was something that really set it apart. It didn't look like a cheap game that somebody threw together. So
well,
that is big.
Well, yeah, and when you see that level of polish and that level of like love put into it, I get the feeling that the developer likes the game. They care. They're not just cranking it out because they're trying to get some shovelware out the door or something. They actually care that shovelware. That's a super old term. But yeah, you know what I mean. It's just like when the game looks good.
That's my new favorite phrase.
Oh. Shovelware and vaporware. But
I've heard vaporware, but shovelware.
Well, shovelware is when you've actually put something out. It's just shovel worthy. Shovel it out the door.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, anyway, like if you can nail that juice down, that the moment-to-moment gameplay, it makes you feel like the developer cares, and you get a little more invested emotionally. At least I think. Because I played some match 3 games off the iOS store that are completely uninspired. Like you play them and you make the match, stuff falls down. It's all like linear and it's all constant speed, and you're like, this feels like garbage. Why would I play this?
Well, Tetris was huge back in the day, and this takes that to an expanded level. Well, and Tetris, when you can change it up and do things different and integrate different things, people would absolutely love that.
Well, Tetris, when you get all your blocks to a certain point, and this is early days, but when you got your blocks to a certain point, the whole row would flash. And then if you hit everything just right, you'd see multiple rows flashing, and then the more would come down and they would hit and those would flash. And the flashes were the neat part. And what I like about TownCrush is you kind of have the next generation of those flashes. You see things hitting each other and spinning around and exploding and stuff like that. And that's the part that really gets me going. It's then you want to do more of it. Yeah, especially when you hit those executioners, and you like take out like one section of the map that was really hard. You couldn't get done. You throw one of those in there and it hits that spot, and then you see things go ka-ching, 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 ka-ching,
mm-hmm. Yeah, or even just the rage of like you use your last executioner and it flies to a completely unrelated part of the level, and like that's not what I wanted. But it keeps you engaged because you have emotions, you care. So it's all good.
All right. So we're over an hour here. And we probably want to make use of not waste your time, because we want you to work more on TownCrush. Any last questions, Mr. Titan,
get back to work.
For people in chat?
For me, just thank you so much, Warren, for coming in here and allowing us to get to know you a little bit, find out more about the game. And I thought this was a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for having me on.
I think we should have another show on ChatGPT. In fact, possibly even how to use it, with programming and other things.
Yeah, that might be fun, actually.
I'm a big defender of it. Yes, it does get things wrong, but so do other humans. I mean, I'd probably go to Warren's house and we could talk about code for a while, and both of us could misunderstand each other for a while, just like we would with ChatGPT. So, I mean, it really has to do with just context. And people... What's nice about ChatGPT is it's really good at figuring out the context. I've asked it some generic questions. And then what's even better is it will come out with something. And then I'll just say, what about this? And it knows from the previous conversation what I was talking about. And it knows what about this means. Can't do that with Google. With Google, you say, what about this? And it's like, it remember previous search.
Yeah, but how Google search is not just the front end of ChatGPT by this point, I have no idea.
Well, they got Bard over there.
Yeah, they're developing their own. I think that's the obvious reason they're trying to make their own. But once they get that done,
notice when you Google something now, you do get a blurb every time you Google. There's a blurb before all the results. That's an AI right there.
That summary or whatever that pops up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an AI doing the summary, and I think it's going to get to a point where the links are going to get lower and lower. It's kind of funny because if you remember Star Trek: The Next Generation, where ChatGPT is that computer voice that everybody was talking to.
Yes. That's a good option. I like that.
Hey, do this kind of search. Well, I remember, back in the day, 1987, when it came out.
What happened to we were at an hour.
No, I remember. No, I just remember, how could the computer even understand the context? But no, this is great. I'd love to. I hope by the time I'm like 70 or 80 that, that Alexa can be as smart as ChatGPT. I wanted to. By the way, on ChatGPT, if you have the phone version, you can actually hit these like headphones up top, and you can talk to it like it's a person, like it's on the phone.
Cool.
That is great, because when I'm driving, a lot of times I think of a lot of things, and I want to research things while I'm driving. And I'll be like, oh, tell me about how these chemicals work with these other chemicals, because I have a lot of weird desires. It just blows into it.
A lot of rando topics. Yeah.
You really need to stop talking, Faz.
Oh, I'm just getting started. Total random topics, and it will just roll it all out. And then, so it makes for interesting conversation if you're interested in learning.
But to be honest, I mean, I know we're running long, but the coolest thing that I saw recently, and you probably saw it on the website at least, ChatGPT 4, you can now just throw images at it. You can grab screenshots and stuff and just throw it at it. The other day I was having some database issue. I took a screenshot of the database program with the the index and how it was defined, as threw it in there. I just said, this is giving me an error, and it completely understood the contents of the
really? Really?
It just parsed it. Just parsed it like it was text, like it was nothing. And I was like, holy shit.
Well, it will draw you it will draw you text pictures, because at one point I was trying to describe the visitor pattern to somebody, if you know what that is. And I said, can you draw me a picture of it? And it drew like an ASCII version of the visitor pattern, which I thought was really cool. And then labeled it and says, okay, what questions about this picture do you have? So that I found really helpful.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I see it going, is once ChatGPT is able to talk to the internet and do stuff and interface with Amazon and stuff, it's just going to become you talking to your phone for everything you want, and it just happens. Like you have some magic assistant.
It's going to be Star Trek. It's going to be Star Trek. And right now people are all like doing this on their phones. After a while, it's just going to be people talking to nothing all the time. All the kids are just going to be talking. I'm not talking to you, Dad. I'm talking to the computer.
Yeah, you have to have like an earpiece or something stuck down in their ear and just be like all day long. Just da, 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 da. I'm totally here for it.
Faz is an iPhone guy. I was an Android guy for a long time, until last year when I just got tired of dealing with all this shit. And I'm actually, of all the assistants, I'm least impressed with Siri, and maybe because it came first, because it's the stupidest out of all of them.
Yeah, one thing ChatGPT does is make Siri look like an idiot.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like Alexa, because at least Alexa can like identify a song if you like give it a lyric or something. But even Alexa looks stupid as hell compared to ChatGPT when you turn on the audio mode with it.
Well, and going back to the Google thing I was talking about, I mean, all I really want from Google, I want it driven by AI, but I just want to do searches with natural language. I'm sick of figuring out keywords. I don't want to figure out what the SEO wants. I just want to say, hey, I'm looking for this thing from my childhood. It was red. It kind of looked like this. And it's just like, oh, you mean this? So you can buy it over there on eBay.
And follow-up questions too. You can't do follow-up questions.
Yeah, context, follow-up questions, all that.
You could be like, okay, the same thing I told you. What about that in yellow? And then be like, oh, okay, a scary future in the movie. Have you guys seen the movie Her?
I think I did.
I haven't.
This is with Joaquin Phoenix, I think, and he basically fell in love with his personal assistant.
Was that the Scarlett Johansson?
And it was
there's
like
another one.
What's that?
Like Ex Machina.
It's like from 2018
is what it was called.
Ex Machina.
Yeah, whatever.
Oh, that's not exactly the same thing. Her was a literal personal assistant, and I think it was the whole computer, the OS was a personal assistant.
Yeah.
And so it ran everything, which of course they will.
We'll have nothing left to do but sit on our fat asses and die.
It's going to be like the ending of WALL-E. We're all going to have hover carts, and it's going to be amazing.
Well, okay, this is what I don't get. People to me, that's progress. So if I was able to write, I don't know, a couple lines of completely tested code in one day. An AI is going to be able to make it so I can write 10 lines a day. That's completely tested. Or it seems to solve problems on an order of magnitude more, because it's like you have a whole team almost of people. You're like, hey, can you just blow this out for me? Because this is all the tedious work. I don't want to have to do this. Just do it. It goes, blah, puts it all out. And then you're just the ones figuring out the problems. Great. I want to figure out the problems. I don't want to sit there and worry about just creating classes or, just creating the infrastructure. It's like, okay, roll out this pattern, except name this object this and name this that, and it'll get 3/4 of it. So it saves me a lot of work and time.
Yeah, I mean, the time saved has just been the big one for me. I'm just like, hey, I'm getting this error message from my database program. It says something about an index or some shit. What does that mean? Sort of thing. And it just says, oh, it means this. Bang. I just saved myself 45 minutes of Googling.
So games faster.
Yeah, and what you're
We're pushing your deadline back now.
You'd be like, I wrote a query like this. You'd say, I wrote a query like this. Why is it even complaining about an index? It'd be like, well, you do know that your query actually uses this index on the join, right? Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that just saved you half an hour fooling around, debugging, all that. Yep. I mean, it's great.
And you could ask as stupid a question as you want, because if you had another developer in the room who thought you were smarter.
That's true. The other advantage with ChatGPT is no judgment.
Yep. So all a man needs is a dog and ChatGPT, and everything's fine.
Oh God, right. You guys are killing me.
All right. Well, I'm going to end it. Thank you very much for coming by and talking stuff with us. And I hope to have you on again later, because I know when this comes out, we'll want to talk about the new game.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Sounds good, guys.
Awesome. Right. Happy coding.